and welcome to Indian Standard Time, a show that speaks to global thinkers and leaders, to people who have made their mark on the sands of time. Today I'm in conversation with Sima Samar, the chairperson of the Human Rights Commission of Afghanistan. Ms. Samar, welcome to Rajya Sabha TV.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to start by asking you, you've been you're the chair of the Human Rights Commission in Afghanistan. How have things changed for Afghanistan in the last 12 or 13 years since the Taliban were thrown out in 2001?
Well, I think there is a lot of achievement and a lot of changes, positive changes in Afghanistan since 2001, particularly on human rights, where women were not allowed to walk because the footstep noise would have made a disturbance to the Taliban government. But currently, women are acting as a politician. They are sitting in the parliament, 25%, more than 25% of women in the parliament. And there's a lot of achievement. Women were not allowed to go to get education. Now that we have more than 3 million children, girls going to school, and we have around 20% or 22% of higher education students or girls. We have quite a good number of girls who coming to India to get a higher education and getting their master degrees. So this is a big achievement in a country like Afghanistan.
Right. You're saying 3 million girls now going to schools in Afghanistan. Earlier during the Taliban regime, girls or women were not allowed to walk on the streets without a male companion.
Absolutely.
Okay, and now they're able to do that. When I'm in Kabul, I see a lot of women in these blue burqas right up to their feet. You can hardly see them. So
yeah, they are allowed to walk without male relative, and nobody check if they walk even with a man. They are not allowed to check if they are their relative or not, because with the Taliban, during Taliban regime, even if they had a male relative with them, they should have had proof that they are really close mahram. It was not really any man. Yeah, they're related, and they're allowed to be related. You know, the husband or the brother and the
father.
Or the father. So very close relative, not even the cousin.
Okay.
But currently nobody does that.
Now they can walk with any man.
That is not the purpose of our walking. That is not the main issue for us. But I think they are able to walk. We don't have a lot of burqas these days in Kabul. It was in 2001 almost 100% of women were walking in the street with burqas. Currently, maybe you will see 15% to 20% of women who are still in the burqas. Absolutely, absolutely. You see that they are walking in the street.
What are the other changes? What are the other changes in life, in society, in the human rights arena, for example?
Well, I think imagine 12 years ago, 13 years ago, using the word human rights was counted as a crime. Currently, it turned to be a discourse within the family and very remote part of the countries. So this is a big achievement in my view.
But the stories that we hear from Afghanistan, huge changes, of course, as you just talked about, but also you still have warlordism, the fear of the Taliban coming back after the elections, killings every day. Soldiers of the Afghan army, the security forces were killed. How do you react as a human rights commissioner?
Well, I think there's no doubt that there's a violation of human rights continues, particularly in countries when we are in conflict. I think killing is happening even in your country where you are not actively in war. In some other countries who are thought to be or said to be normal countries, like in the US and in London and in European countries. But yes, because we are still in war, and because still the law enforcement is not 100% in place, because we still have problem with accountability and justice, so there is a violation of human rights.
When you say you have problems with accountability and justice, are you then saying that the government of President Karzai isn't paying that much attention to human rights?
Well, I think the governments everywhere, unfortunately, are part of the violators of human rights, including in Afghanistan. It's not only in Afghanistan, it's in our region. But I would say that imagine that in Afghanistan, where we are still in conflict, we still have a lot of warlords in power, but we do have a Human Rights Commission which could do a lot of work on promotion and protection of human rights. But look at our neighboring countries who are not at war, They don't have the Human Rights Commission, a National Human Rights Commission who could do...
In Iran?
No, not in Iran, not in Pakistan, not in Tajikistan, not in Turkmenistan, not in Uzbekistan. Pakistan has an NGO as a Human Rights Commission, not a national institution of human rights.
Okay. That's a huge, huge achievement, I think, inside for you as an Afghan, as for your country.
But for me as an Afghan, as a woman.
Absolutely.
And being a radical woman.
Okay. And so I'm going to come to you on that issue for a bit, but tell me, just to continue. So if a warlord in a province in Afghanistan, if he commits human rights, and I'm sure, and we'll talk about the Taliban later, do you as a Human Rights Commissioner, have you passed any strictures against these
Absolutely.
people?
Absolutely.
Give me an example.
I think, let's say there was a rape case in north of Afghanistan in a very conservative area by local, they call it local police,
in
the
what
militias
province?
in Kunduz.
Kunduz, okay.
And the rape was done by this commander. He's still the head of the group.
He's a warlord.
Yes, he is a warlord. Okay. He has been one of the commanders before, and he's still in that position. And then imagine that the very conservative member of the family, a Kuchi, a nomad, the father came and asked for accountability. And
asked
he came,
you?
yes, he came to us.
To your office?
To our office and complained. And he said he doesn't really mind if he and his daughter is on television. For us, when even for the registration card for election, they don't allow their wives to be photographed. Somebody comes from very conservative part of the society and say that I don't mind to be in television.
That's huge.
Absolutely. And he said that I want my daughter to be in television, and I want myself to be in television to protect the other girls.
But,
and this is
she would be without her parda, without her burqa?
Absolutely, without burqa. Open face.
That's incredible. And did it happen?
Yeah, it happened. And luckily we were able to force the government to bring that person in justice. And I think he got him long years in imprisonment. I don't remember the exact, I think it's more than 20 years. Okay,
and you call yourself a radical feminist? What do you call yourself?
Well, there's no doubt I'm a feminist, and I'm radical in Afghanistan term, because I speak of equality of women and equity of women in every field.
And all these men that are in power in the government, from Hamid Karzai downwards, across the country, what do they say? They're okay with you?
Well, I think they have to accept me, and I already made my space to impose myself on them. They like it or not. I'm there and I'm present.
They have no option, basically.
Well, they do have option, but they cannot ignore. The reality is that I was able to impose myself and make the space for myself.
Okay, Sima, hold your thought. I'm going to take a very quick break. I'm taking a very quick break, but we'll be back very soon. Welcome back. You're watching Indian Standard Time, and I'm in conversation with Sima Samar, the Human Rights Commissioner of Afghanistan. Ms. Samar, before we went for the break, you were talking about how the situation in Afghanistan is changing, inside Afghanistan. People are coming to terms with it, or somewhat coming to terms with the idea of human rights. But tell me, Afghanistan is in the middle of a very uncertain, violent, destabilized neighborhood. You yourselves are very much part of this. You're going to have elections very soon. Are you worried that the Taliban will come back?
Yes, I mean, in 2014 we have a lot of transition. One transition is a military transition from the international forces to the Afghan security forces.
When the Americans and the NATO forces will leave Afghanistan?
At the end of the 2014, yes. And at least they leave the security part of the responsibility to the Afghan security forces. The second transition that we have is the political transition, that we are going to have election and 5th of April, hopefully, on time. And we will have, for the first time in our history, that we will have the political transition without fighting, without violence, hopefully in another next elected person. The third transition that we are talking about is the economical transition, because with the NATO forces, with the PRTs in different provinces, we had a lot of money has been spent in that area, and a lot of people were employed. But with closing down those PRTs and they leaving the country, we have an unemployment of those almost 30 to 40,000 people who were working for them. So a lot of the
foreign aid that was coming in, you're afraid that that will disappear? That will
most probably. I think what is really needed, that it should be a proper, comprehensive strategy with all 3 or 4 dimensions that we are facing in 2014.
Right.
But I would say the Taliban will not come back. I have reasons for it.
Okay.
One, I think we are in a different century. We are not in 1990s anymore. We are in 2014. And this last 13 years, Afghanistan changed a lot. It's not same people. Number 2, I think we have
So when we still think of Afghanistan as a backward nation, that's not true.
I don't think that is true. Okay. I mean, yes, in part of the country we still have a problem and the people are really poor and they live in poverty. But there's a lot of positive changes in the country. One of the things what I could say is that we have 10,000 Afghan who are studying in India and getting their masters in, some of them are PhDs and bachelor.
Right, but you were saying that you're not afraid of the, you're saying that the Taliban are not coming back. You're sure about that?
Absolutely, 100%.
And how are you so sure?
Well, one, as I said, that we are not in 1990s. Okay. 2, I think we have a lot of educated people and a lot of women who are active, and they somehow they exercise their basic freedom and they're not going to give up their freedom. 3, we have quite a good media compared to the Taliban time, that we had one national television which was broken and they locked it up. Currently we have more than 60 television, and thanks to the technology, now they could have the radio in their backpack and go to the hill and mountain.
So 60 television channels in Afghanistan?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
In all the languages, in Dari, in Pashto,
in our own language,
Tajik,
in Uzbeki also.
And all the various languages.
Yeah.
But Sayyaf, Abdul Sayyaf, the Hizb-e-Islami,
Ittihad Islami.
Hizb-e-Ittihad Islami, he is a candidate in the presidency.
He is also a candidate.
And you're not worried about that?
No, I don't think so, because I think the people of Afghanistan know whom to choose. And I think the people's participation on election, including women, will guarantee the transparency and the fairness of the election.
So all women, all adult women can vote in the elections?
Absolutely. The one who are...
And everybody has an identity card?
Not everybody, but most of the people who registered, it's not identity card, it's voting, unfortunately, voting card.
Okay.
Because we are still working on the electronic ID cards.
Okay.
And hopefully we will have it for next election.
So you're not worried, to ask you again, Ms. Samar, you're not concerned. There's a lot of concern inside India, for example, that the Taliban may come back. You will have a much more strife-ridden society.
I don't think the Taliban will come back, and
or maybe parts of the Taliban.
No, I think we already have part of the Taliban in the government, so it's not really, if not the Taliban themselves, but the brothers of Taliban is in the government, so it is not a big issue for Afghans, because we know the reality in the ground.
But this whole thing about how Karzai and the government and the Loya Jirga, the High Peace Council, they were supposed to be talking to the representatives of the Taliban, whether they're in Quetta Shura, Miramshah, in Pakistan or in other parts of the neighborhood.
I think the problem is that they are saying that they are talking. We are not sure that they are talking. I think that the government of Afghanistan and also the international community, the partners, have not found any leadership within the Taliban who has the exact power to control the Taliban. We don't know who is really controlling them.
Do you think?
We believe that our neighboring country is controlling them rather than their own leadership.
Which neighboring country?
Well, we have Pakistan as our neighbor. Everybody blames Pakistan, that there's no doubt they are living in Pakistan. We have our other neighbor who has a problem with the Americans.
Iran.
And as one of our colleagues was saying, we are fighting a proxy war in Afghanistan, and we might have a proxy peace, but I don't think that will happen because it's too early to do it.
No, one second. Explain that. Well, because a proxy peace. What does that mean?
Well, because the war is going on not only by Afghan, it's almost regional and international war.
Between, tell me the sides, explain the sides.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Al-Qaeda and the fundamentalists in one side from all over. I don't know if we have in Indians, but we do have Chechen, Bangladesh, Uzbek, and Pakistanis in Afghanistan. And we do have all the other international forces, including NATO forces in Afghanistan, who are fighting still with the fundamentalism in Afghanistan, or so-called terrorism in Afghanistan.
Right.
So we might have proxy peace by these groups, and it will not be peace, it will be a negotiation.
So do you think you should talk to the Taliban?
Well, I think there's no harm on talking, because war, nobody will be winner in the war. Everybody is loser in the war. If they don't admit, that's another problem, but in reality, everybody is loser in war.
And what is the role of Pakistan's establishment in this?
I think it's not only Pakistan, let's say it's a regional problem.
Okay.
Unless we solve the regional, acknowledge first of all the problem between our countries, and then try to find a solution for that. And fundamentalism will continue to have a space.
Okay. Sima, I'm going to take a very quick break again. We're taking a very quick break, but we'll be back very soon. Welcome back. You're watching Indian Standard Time, and we are in conversation with Sima Samar, the Human Rights Commissioner of Afghanistan. Ms. Samar, before we took a break, you were telling me about the role of the neighborhood in the Afghan problem. So Afghanistan is a prize then, really, between Iran, Pakistan, Central Asia, the US on the one hand, the Russians. Where is India in this whole?
Well, I think fortunately or unfortunately, India is also somehow involved. At least they blamed India also.
Who blamed India?
Well, our neighboring countries, and some people in Afghanistan also, they blame India also that they are involved. I think the problem in Afghanistan have three layers. One is the national problem between the Afghans, between the different ethnic group, between the different kind of mentality and Taliban style of thinking. And then we have a regional problem that involves all of us, including India. And then we have international problem that everybody is involved, from the Arabs up to everybody else in Afghanistan, and also all the NATO countries. Imagine that we have 47 countries soldier in Afghanistan. This is official. Yeah. So we have all those.
And you're waiting for them to go.
All of them, all the jihadis also
from a variety of countries.
Yeah, absolutely.
So once these NATO forces leave, you will be happy to see them go?
Well, I think we, not completely, that's my personal view as a citizen, because we still need part of them for training and mentoring our security forces. Because we were at war since 35 years, and we had different kind of, we had different level of violence, and we had different kind of government with different mentality. We had the pro-Russian, the communist, and then we had the Mujahideen, and then the Taliban, the other extreme, and now we have so-called the democratic government. And I think we still need the international community to help us to build our institution and good governance in the country. So for that reason, I think we do need the NATO forces in order to train our security forces and equip our security forces.
Okay. Do you want India to help you do that?
Well, I think India can play a strong role. I am not sure that how politics will play, because if India train our security forces, then the Pakistanis will not be happy. And if the Pakistan train our security forces, India will not be happy. So I think we might be much better for Afghanistan to get away from the training of our security forces in the region. It might be easier for us to be done by Turkey, for example, or by NATO forces.
Okay. So just to come back to, I'll ask you a little bit later about the role that India can play, but to ask you about the role Iran can play, for example.
I think all of the Afghanistan neighbors can play a positive role, because I think peace and security in Afghanistan will benefit everybody, including India, including Iran and Pakistan and the Central Asian countries.
So are women, to interrupt you, are women much more free in Afghanistan than in Iran?
Well, it depends, because Iran has different style of the government, and in terms of...
But there's a big separation between the sexes in Iran.
Well, don't forget that the majority of women, students in the universities are women in Iran. There have never been a ban on education of women and their access to education.
Unlike Afghanistan.
Yeah, but the difference that we have 3 female minister in Afghanistan, and there's no female minister in Iran. But there's a new ideas and new thought on Shia, let's say Muslim religion, that women can be president, women can be judge, women can be prime minister, women can be minister. So they need actually to come up to that level. And then in terms of education, Iranian women are much more educated than the Afghans, because they had the possibility, they had the access to education.
But inside
so they have co-education in the universities.
But they're still separate. They're co-education. The boys and the girls study in the same classroom. But in many ways, they're very, very separate. No?
Well, I don't think they are very separate on different issues. But of course, we do have, for example, we have girls who play cricket, and they don't have cricketers, female cricketers.
In Afghanistan?
We have, yes, we do have 2,400 girls who play cricket. And they play in the open space.
Inside Afghanistan?
Inside Afghanistan, yes.
I see. And it's okay? Everybody's okay with that?
Well, not everybody. The one who doesn't like it, they should not watch it.
Okay.
I think that's the easiest solution.
That's great. So obviously, you know, the society is changing so rapidly. But tell me about the role of religion. You are an Islamic Republic of Afghanistan. Do you feel that human rights and religion, perhaps somewhere, it doesn't...
I don't think they have clashes or contradiction. It depends how you interpret a religion, not only in Afghanistan, but in any religion. I mean, you name it. Hinduism, or Hindu, Christian, Buddhism, Jewish, everybody. When you're trying to use the religion as a tool to oppress the people, then you can always do it. In every religion you can do it.
Right.
But I think the real interpretation of Islam needs to be implemented in Islamic countries.
And as the Human Rights Commissioner of Afghanistan, how would you interpret it?
Well, I think there's a clear line on Islam for human rights and respect for dignity of the people.
And the
what
dignity
we
of
really
women.
need, I mean, it's clearly said that the men and women has equal dignity.
And equal rights.
Equal rights. I mean, when you have equal dignity, means you can have equal rights.
Absolutely. And it's clearly said, you were saying?
It's clearly said in Islam that the people are made with equal dignity, and they have to live with dignity.
Right. So just to come back, we have very little time left, but just to come back quickly to the situation inside Afghanistan around, elections are going to take place any time, but even after the elections, you seem to be worried, concerned, confident, proud.
I'm confident, because I think we've gone through a very, very difficult time, and now we are in much better situation, because I've been through all these different government, and I've been fighting with all the government, including the current one, for human rights and equality.
President Karzai's government?
Yeah, absolutely. So
and have you been
we
winning
have
some
much
of those
better.
Fights? Have you won some of those fights?
A lot, a lot.
Okay. Give me one quick example.
Well, I think the equal rights for women, women's participation.
He was not in favor.
Well, he was not openly in favor, at least.
But you pushed him.
We pushed, not only me, but I was also part of one of the leading people in this issue.
Well, you clearly got your way. But I cannot let you go without saying that Afghan rulers have ruled over India for thousands of years. Muhammad of Ghazni, Ghori, Nadir Shah, Qutbuddin Aibak, you name it, and they've all been in India. So I think we need to give back in some way.
Absolutely. I think I have to say that you have Qutb Minar here.
Yes.
And it's done by the Qutbuddin Ghori in Afghanistan. And we almost have the similar minaret in Ghor, but much smaller.
Okay.
I think we have to remember the history, but we doesn't really need to repeat the same thing. But what we should do, I think we should learn from the history.
Sima Samar, pleasure talking to you.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me.
I'm afraid that's all we have for today. You've been watching Indian Standard Time in conversation with Sima Samar, the Human Rights Commissioner of Afghanistan. Next week, we'll bring you an equally exciting global thinker or leader. Till then, goodbye and good luck.